So let's start with golden hour. And the golden hour, or golden hours, isn't exactly an hour, but that time shortly after sunrise or shortly before sunset, you have less dynamic range. The yellows and the oranges, the kind of reds, the warm colors really come out. And it's also a softer, more diffused light. And the shadows are softer. So, for example, if we're here in Japan at lunchtime, let's say it's noon, well, that's, the sun is overhead. It gives harsh shadows. But if we are over on the west coast of the U.S. looking west towards Japan, the sun is over here, so it's passing through more atmosphere to get to us on the beach on the west coast. So acts as sort of a filter. So sunrise here in Japan, for example, you can see the shadows are much softer. You can kind of see through it, right? Rather than almost a solid black that you might get often at when the sun is high in the sky. And then in the evening, just before sunset, you get really, really warm colors. And maybe sunset even warmer or more interesting because, the wind has kicked the dust up into the atmosphere over, all those miles. So really, really makes a really warm atmosphere. This is a shot, just iPhone shot, from a ship in the inland sea of Japan a few weeks ago in August. And so, the oranges really, really blast out. I didn't use any color grading on this at all, or this, but it's just, wow, it just really pops out the oranges. So this is at 6:22. The sun sets about 30 minutes later. So it gives you an idea about, when this was taken. And in the movie, there was lots and lots of shots at sunset or around sunset during the magic hour, the golden hour. And it's really, really nice. Really makes the subjects look nice. This one, I don't think this was shot strictly speaking at golden hour, but just it's consistent with the feeling, the visual feeling, if you will, of shots. Really luscious colors. And this reminded me of the kind of restaurants because this, bar is supposed to be, I guess, on the beach, so it would get a lot of sunset lights coming in. And this is actually home movies growing up. This is our house on the beach in Seaside, Oregon in the 60s. And this is a feeling that you get when you're in a restaurant, for example, on the beach in San Diego or up in Seaside, Oregon, wherever. And that's the mood that was often shot here. So you can see that the restaurant or the bar has windows looking out into the coast area, the beach area, so you really get those warm colors coming in. And that's something we can achieve when we're shooting as well. So this shot here, this is the same ship. So this ship right here, this is the same ship, say 30 seconds before. So that sun is really beating down, that luscious golden hour, magic hour sun is beating down on it. But the shadows are so soft, you can hardly see them. And then, of course, if we look back at our subject, it really makes our subjects look really nice. It's just a really soft, golden kind of light. Here's my family with an iPhone shot here. But the skin is just, there are no harsh shadows. So, over the eyes, so you won't get the harsh shadows on the eyes. You don't have people squinting as much and so on. Here's another shot that kind of explains it. The sunset was still about 15 minutes away. So there is a bright sun that this ship is facing into, but you can hardly see the shadows. I mean, they're there, but look how soft they are. And of course, the human subjects would have those soft shadows as well. So it looked really nice. All right. So that's golden hour, right? Really good for subjects, human subjects, and also just achieving sort of dramatic kinds of shots. All right, next one is the idea of using a grid. So whether it's a rule of third grids, which you may have heard of before, which is probably came from the phi grid, which itself comes from the Fibonacci sequence. So the Fibonacci sequence is any sequence, well, it's a sequence where each number is the sum of the two numbers that came before it. So 0 and 1 is 1, and 1 and 1 are 2, and 1 and 2 are 3, and 3 and 5 are 8, and so on and so on. So it's an irrational number. Just no dealing with it. Anyway, so if we visualize this represent it visually as a series of boxes, this adds up to this rectangle, which is called the golden rectangle or the golden spiral. And it's this number. So it's this line. If you had this ratio of 1 to 1.618. And that is where A plus B is to A, the longer line, as A is to B. Does that make sense? And there's a feeling that this is something you can see. Well, there's evidence that you can see this in nature. But I won't get too much into that now. I read this book, and I have this on my shelf. I'm looking at it right now. I must have bought it 15 years ago or so. And this guy really goes into deep detail about how you can find this in nature and then how humans have used this in art and architecture. So it's really, really interesting if you want to take a deep dive into it. But just really quickly, so yeah, you can kind of see this used all over the world. The golden rectangle doesn't fit exactly perfectly, but you do see there's the line, the 1 to 0.618. So yeah, there's something to this. Some people like to put the grid over the face. Yeah, there's something to that. The rectangle doesn't exactly fit perfectly the canvas, but it's close. And if we make a phi grid out of it, yeah, it's close. There's something to that. Of course, designers have used this for a long time. This is the first iPhone. I actually still have mine. I got it 50% off when I was working at Apple back when the iPod, did I say iPhone? iPod, when the iPod came out. This is the Hokusai print. I don't know if Hokusai used a phi grid or a rule of thirds grid, but it's interesting how a professional artist, maybe they just know this intuitively or feel it intuitively, but it's beautifully balanced. We mere mortals can use a grid to try to balance things out and achieve a kind of balance or asymmetrical balance. Just more examples from history. Yeah, the phi grid or the rule of thirds grid could kind of work. And then in the movie itself, now I don't know if they used a phi grid or a rule of thirds grid, but it's interesting just to go back and look at it, kind of imagine, here's a phi grid. What is interesting and important to note is the eye line. So generally speaking, you want your eyes on the upper line. And in this case, notice how they're exactly lined up together because they're going back and forth, of course, talking. And then the balance of the shot itself. She's on the far right third here, and he's on the left 2/3 here. That's just interesting. This shot too, if we use a phi grid, so that's on the 1, and then this is the 0.618. I recommend for students just to use the rule of thirds because it's simple to use. It's simple to make one, or you can just Google search and you can find many, and then just stretch it out so that it fits your slides or your video, and then you can delete it, of course, when you export it. And some people get, kind of bent out of shape because they don't like the name rule of thirds as if it's a rule. It's not a rule, of course. It should be called the guide of thirds, but that doesn't sound right, I guess. So it is just a guide. It's a useful guide, tried and true, but it doesn't mean you have to follow it all the time. But it is interesting to go back and look how a lot of shots in movies, a lot, are really lined up. And it is very useful for us. So a shot like this, we could say that the ground could be on the bottom third, and the center could be the mountains, and the upper third could be the sky. And the movie, of course, just used a lot of asymmetrical balance like this. Was it a rule of thirds? Was it a phi grid? I don't know. But you can see that the idea, it's okay to put things in the center, but a grid can help you achieve symmetrical balance as well. But you see a lot of asymmetrical balance in dialogues going back and forth. Notice the eye on the top line or around the top line. This is a great shot. What's interesting about this, like his left eye and this actor's left eye too lined up perfectly as they're going back and forth. And of course, most of it is empty space achieved through the bokeh or blur background. So just great shots. And it's just full of shots like this. Now, even this one, I remember the shot. I noticed this pilot first because, dead center, she's walking, but the concept of eye gaze, she's looking in the direction of where they want us to look. And very quickly we go here. And then there's the close-up shots on the grid. Another shot, just to give you an idea. The whole movie is just such beautiful, so beautifully shot. And most people aren't aware of this, but you might be. You might be interested in this, and as you look at movies, you'll notice how they shot them, how they set them up with a lot of care. And this is an example where, you could use a grid even to kind of help you make sure you have the lines straight, and also to achieve very dead center, to give, in this case, he's feeling the burden of, the pressure that he's under. Another shot like this, you could use a grid to achieve this. It's very symmetrical. And you can see these implied lines. And having the subject, the pilot down there walking across, really adds, because it gives you the scale and makes the shot much more dramatic. Anyway, just more shots. Just all shots. You'll be finding this. You don't always have to do it, but you'll find yourself using a grid, either literally using a grid or just, trying to balance your shots out. putting a subject maybe on the third on the right or third on the left and so on. Just a lot of shots like this. A lot of shots. Almost everything. And of course, if you're just using an iPhone, you can turn on the grid to help you even with your kind of medium shots. Or if you want to get a closer shot, like a macro shot or a close-up, you kind of use it to achieve balance or asymmetrical balance, like this or like this. And what I do to get my golden ratio or phi grid is I just use Photoshop. So inside Photoshop, there's using the crop tool, for example, you can get a grid like this. And rule of thirds as well. Or just Google search and you can find and just lay it over the top. Okay, so that's it for grids. Whether you use a rule of thirds or a phi grid, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, this is something pros do, or artists might do this intuitively, but it's really great for beginners to help you achieve asymmetrical balance and really line up your shots in a more professional way. Next, close-ups. I think this is the big one. Get close, fill the frame, really, really get close. So even if you had a really good shot like this, a lot of students and beginners take a lot of wide shots and maybe medium shots at best and almost never close-up. So, be creative, move the feet, get close. Of course, it could be closer to people at different angles, or it could be actual physical things as well. But this movie, Top Gun, just had a lot of close-ups, And of course, the close-ups, you get more of the emotion when your subjects are human. That's the idea of a close-up. But it doesn't just have to be faces, of course. You can get close to other things. Really get in there, different objects. And this movie had a lot of cutaways to really close-ups of things in the cockpit or other objects, in the bar or whatever. So it doesn't really matter what you call them, but this would be a close-up or a medium close-up. Usually close-up is the face and the head, maybe a little bit of the shoulders. It doesn't really matter, but you get more emotion that way. This is a close-up, or is it an extreme close-up? I don't think it matters so much what you call it. This is definitely an extreme close-up. Extreme close-up is, where you get super, super close to something. And you can do it not just for faces, too. You could call this an extreme close-up, or maybe to call it macro. But, this is an iPhone here. And it's quite good. I could have done a better job with the focus, but it's pretty much in focus, and you can still get a lot of bokeh. This is just iPhone 12. I'm sure iPhone 14 or some of the Androids and so on can do even better. But this is amazing what a phone can do. So just remember, think about ways you can get close. So you're going to get those medium shots, let's say, of the potter, but how can you get close? Close-up of the hands, close-up of the face, and so on.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Well, that would be the close-up, I guess. So this shot is actually medium. Anyway, so here's an example. A lot of, even if it's shot well, this sequence of making coffee, rather than just this medium shot, you could do something like this where, you start off that way, and then you can come in cutaways like this or like this, and then back to the wider shot. Okay, so that's it for close-ups. All right, let's review. Golden hour, early morning, evening before sunset. Of course, it's very dramatic, but also can make your subject look awesome. Really beautiful shots. Use a grid either in editing or actually in camera to try to achieve asymmetrical balance, but it can also be useful for centering things the way you want, getting the eye in the upper third and so on. And then the use of close-up. That's a big one, the use of close-ups. So get that camera in there, even if you're just using a smartphone. Your smartphone is amazing. Even an older smartphone, you can really get in there and get some good shots. All right, so I hope this was useful. I'm hoping that this will help you to tell your visual stories better. This was aimed for beginners, people who are just starting out, who have a smartphone, but you want to make better home movies or better short films for your schoolwork, or maybe you're a teacher and so on. Whatever the case is, I hope this helped you at least a little bit.